there's a certain urgency, I think, because I totally disagree with people who think that human history, can be seen wandering aimlessly into the millennia of the future with faster spacecraft and better packaged foods and more effective forms of psychotherapy and so forth. And this seems to me preposterous. Obviously, human history is some kind of self-limiting process that is seeking to maximize something. And if you look over what we've been doing, it seems like what we're trying to maximize is an ability to release energy. There's a certain urgency, I think. There's a certain urgency, I think. Because I totally disagree with people who think that human history, can be seen wandering aimlessly into the millennia of the future with because I totally disagree with people who think that human history, can be seen wandering aimlessly into the millennia of the future with faster spacecraft. And do better packaged foods and more effective forms of psychotherapy and so forth. And this seems to me preposterous. Obviously, human history is some kind of self-limiting process that is seeking to maximize something. And if you look over what we've been doing, it seems like what we're trying to maximize is an ability to release energy. Energy. Well, I think psychedelics are catalysts to thought, to imagination, to understanding. And we are like somebody who has been dead drunk while the house was burning down around us. And now we have awakened to the sound of falling timbers and the smell of smoke. And we have a certain limited amount of time to figure this situation out. We don't have 500 years or 100 years. Anybody who speaks in terms of solutions that require 100 years or even 50 years to implement doesn't understand the dynamics of the situation. History has some kind of will for its own transcendence. And I think we are now so close to the dropping of the mask and the realization of what the game was all along, that the sense of this nearby revelation informs all of our lives. I mean, drives our dreams, our thoughts, the choices we make, why we're here in this room this evening. It's very big news, I think. The world is not at all as we suppose it to be. I find that very amazing. I mean, that's the bottom line for me. We have been slave too long to ideology transmitted hierarchically and based on a tremendously alienating instrumentality. That's what science depends on now, a tremendously alienating instrumentality. What we need to do is empower experience. Well, this is where the psychedelics come in. 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 What I call the Gaian Mind, that there is actually a hyper-intelligent being on this planet, or in this planet. It perhaps is this planet, but it is sentient. It thinks. It can communicate. We are like atoms inside the body, or cells inside the body of this enormous organism, which is the cause of our religious obsessing. The reason we're always running around looking for God Almighty is because we evolved on a planet inhabited by a superintelligence. 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 That we have lost contact with, and so we deny its intelligence. We, at this point, even deny its vitality. I mean, you know, the Judeo-Christian shtick is that nature is to be at the service of man. And, you know, this is a complete inversion of the idea that human beings should be the active hands of the Gaian Mind. The Gaian Mind. The Gaian Mind. The Gaian Mind. And this didn't happen for there's no bad guy in this scenario. The Gaian process is more than a process. It is a self-reflecting intellect of some sort. Where is life carrying us? What is this all about? Is it carrying us toward extinction, so that the rest of nature can heave an enormous sigh of relief and then get back to the business of nest building, mating flights, and oviposturing, and whatever it is that they're doing out there? Or is it carrying us toward some kind of a transition? If you look back through the history of life, which is a long history. I mean, it reaches back 1 billion years. Every advance happens suddenly, unpredictably, and in a very short period of time. Some of you who stay tuned to the scientific literature may have noticed this series of articles that were around last week about what they're calling the Big Bang of biology. That there was a period of time, incredibly brief, perhaps between 1 million and 10 million years, when all the phyla of life on this planet radiated into existence, sometime between 525 and 535 million years ago. Just it all snapped into existence. The episode in which life left the sea is a similar, highly confined transition event. People recently have written about what they call punctated or punctuated evolution. Evolution is not apparently a slow curve of unfoldment. It is instead a series of equilibrium states punctuated by violent fluctuations in between, and then a new equilibrium state. So history, I believe, is not an aberration any more than leaving the sea could be called an aberration of marine existence. I mean, obviously it is not marine existence, and obviously we are not living in the same world as groundhogs and hummingbirds psychologically. But leaving the sea did not represent an ontological transition. It represented an extremely dramatic shift of modality. And this is what history is. History is characterized by its brevity, for one thing. I mean, we have packed more change into the last 10,000 years than the billion years which preceded it. I mean, and yet as entities, as animals, meat, we have not changed at all in 10,000 years. If you were to go back to that era, the people would be exactly like people we see today. They wouldn't be so racially heterogeneous because the great gene streamings and migrations that characterize history had not yet taken place, but essentially perfectly modern people. Well, then history is apparently, if we view it as a process that nature tolerates, if not encourages, then history is essentially, apparently, important enough to to jeopardize the stability of all the rest of the natural ecosystemic world. It's as though nature is saying we are willing to place the entire planetary ecology in danger for 50,000 years in order for the opportunity to be explored of language-using, technologically expressing intelligence, carrying all of life to the next level. And it's a terrifying enterprise because apparently to carry life to the next level, tremendous intellectual sophistication is required about the release and control of energy. The problem is, energy can be used to destroy as well as build. So as the human enterprise has moved toward greater and greater power and ability to manipulate the environment, the stakes in the cosmic game have risen. And now what we have is approximately $100 billion sitting in the center of the crap table, and one roll of the dice more, and we're going to either win it or lose everything. Because intelligence, if we fail, will never again reach the kind of levels on this planet that we have reached. Why? Because we have extracted all the available metals near the surface of the earth. An evolving species following after us will find the earth strangely depleted of usable materials down to the 1,500-foot level. And so intelligence coming beyond us will find it just does not have the resources to make the leap to technical civilization. So it's beginning to look like a one-shot deal. how man may be dirigible is basically by turning himself inside out. In other words, the body must become an interiorized hologrammatic object embedded in a solid-state hyperdimensional matrix, which is eternal, so that man wanders through Elysium in his body. This is a kind of Islamic paradise that I'm putting out here. Wanders through Elysium in his body, experiencing all the pleasures of the flesh, but not realizing that he is a holographic projection of a solid-state matrix that is micro-miniaturized, superconducting, and nowhere to be found. It is part of the planet. And all history is about producing prototypes of this situation with greater and greater closure toward the ideal, so that airplanes, automobiles, condominiums, space shuttles, space colonies, starships of the hardware, speed of light, spin-dizzy drive type, all of these are, as Mercelian says, self-transforming images of flight that speak volumes about man's aspiration to self-transcendence, so that our wish, our salvation, and our only hope, basically, is to end the historical crisis by becoming the alien, by ending alienation, by recognizing the alien as the self, in fact, recognizing the alien as an overmind which holds all the physical laws of the planet intact in the same way that you hold an idea intact in your mind. In other words, all these givens which are thought to be so rich in adamantine are actually merely the moods of the God, if you will, which we happen to be. And the whole thing about human history is recovering this piece of lost information so that man may be dirigible. Or, again, to quote Finnegan's Wake, Moycane is the red light district of Dublin. Here in Moycane we flop on the seamy side, but up in the end, prospector, you sprout all your worth and you whoop your wings. So if you want to be Phoenix, come and be parked. It's that simple, you see. But it takes courage to be parked when the Grim Reaper draws near. A blessing in the skies, Joyce calls it. A blessing in the skies, Joyce calls it. So the debilitating, damaging, maladaptive drugs are all legal. And what is restricted then is stuff which gives you funny ideas. That's the problem, the funny ideas category. Well, put that way, it doesn't take long to see why. Because funny ideas are very problematic for institutions. On the other hand, funny ideas are the life breath of creativity. So, who are we going to make comfortable? A bunch of control freaks? DMT is like something that fell out of a strong saucer. I mean, it is so strong and so psychedelic. I mean, I can't imagine being that or wanting to be. It's more like a near-death experience than any near-death experience I've ever heard anybody describe. They sound absolutely ridiculous compared to a DMT trip where, you're sure you're dead. You say, what the hell else could it be?